Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome, Lexington listeners, to today's deep dive. Usually local city council meetings here move to a very, predictable rhythm.
Right, very safe.
Yeah, motions are made, committees deliberate, things happen at a very measured pace. But if you watch the April 21st, 2026 session regarding Lexington's $8.9 million opioid settlement, you saw that rhythm just completely derail.
It really did.
So our mission today is to look at a recent local commentary piece. We're trying to unpack Vice Mayor Dan Wu's really surprising shift from like a notoriously cautious politician to a fiery advocate on the council floor.
Yeah, because the debate over that money was, well, anything but measured. To give you the background, the city's Opioid Abatement Commission had been sitting on this money for over 3 years.
Wow, 3 years.
3 years, deliberating without sending a single dime out the door to actually address the crisis.
Yeah.
And the administration's plan was to take $3 million of that settlement and, locked away in an interest-bearing endowment.
Which, I get the logic. Administrations love endowments.
Oh, absolutely they do.
They generate that slow, perpetual, safe income. It's fiscally conservative. But Vice Mayor Wu just revolted. He basically argued that the opioid epidemic in the community is an active crisis and requires immediate liquidity, not a savings account.
Right.
He used this incredibly sharp analogy. He said, if you're fighting a fire, you don't save your money for a longer hose later on.
Exactly. What's fascinating here is how Wu forced the issue. He didn't just disagree. He completely bypassed the standard slow-moving committee process.
Which is huge for local government.
Right, it's very bureaucratic usually. But he proposed a back-of-the-napkin reallocation right there in the room. He insisted he was willing to spend the entire $8.9 million down to zero right then.
And it mostly works, right? He killed the endowment motion and boosted the immediate grant allocations up to $3 million.
He did, yeah.
But the job isn't entirely done. There is still $3.7 million remaining unassigned. And Lexington's Substance Use Disorder Intervention Program, SUDI, is somehow still completely unfunded.
Which brings us to the bigger puzzle here, honestly. This sudden urgency is a glaring contrast to the extreme caution Wu has shown over his past 2 years in office.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Because, remember, he won a massive progressive mandate in 2022. But his track record since then has been highly guarded.
Right, so what does this all mean? Did Wu just discover his voice, or are local housing fights just, riskier political capital than spending opioid cash?
That's the real question.
Because, looking back at Gaza in March 2024, advocates asked the council for a ceasefire resolution just to show moral solidarity. And Wu just read a very safe statement mourning all sides, claiming the council doesn't take positions on international policy.
Yeah, he chose a half measure, which immensely frustrated advocates who just wanted an on-the-record stance. But the housing issue is where the contrast is even sharper. Rent in Lexington spiked almost 18% in just one 12-month stretch between 2021 and 2022.
18% is wild. But to be fair, he did vote for a source of income anti-discrimination ordinance back then.
He did.
For those unfamiliar, that was meant to stop landlords from rejecting tenants just because they use housing vouchers. But then the state legislature stepped in with House Bill 18.
Yes, they preempted the city entirely. They overrode a veto on HB 18, which structurally blocked Lexington from enforcing that specific ordinance.
But that didn't kill the whole movement. Kentucky Tenants has been pushing for a tenants' bill of rights. That includes things like a landlord registry or a right to counsel in eviction court.
Right, and HB 18 didn't touch those initiatives.
Exactly. The council could still enact them, yet Wu hasn't really fought for them. It makes you think of political capital as like a limited battery charge.
That's a really good way to put it.
You only have enough juice to really blow up the process once a year. With the opioid settlement, everybody agrees the money needs to be spent. But with landlords and tenants, you're making powerful enemies either way.
That is the absolute crux of it. Fighting for tenant rights requires expending heavy political capital against organized opposition, pushing out opioid money. Your only real opposition is bureaucratic inertia.
Right.
Then you have to look at the calendar, Wu launched his re-election campaign in December 2025. Local policy dictates what happens in your backyard, eviction court rulings, millions in unspent settlement money. These dictate daily life in Lexington.
Which brings us to next week, when the city council debates that remaining $3.7 million in opioid funds. So for you listening, here is the question to mull over.
Yeah, what happens next?
Will this new combative Dan Wu show up with the hose to finally fund SUDI and fight the stigma around Narcan? Or was this week's grit just a one-off performance for the campaign trail? And honestly, if he does win re-election on this fiery new persona, is he actually prepared to govern like that for the next 4 years?